this tutorial you will need this paper, per usual, this permanent ink that you really want to be careful with because it can stain and stay on things, so I would recommend reading the instructions before adding this or using this, and also getting the recommended cleaner so that you do not stain your stamps or mess anything up in your little craft area. If you've never used this ink before, I would try it out on different areas on paper before you get it. And you will also need a stamp set, and if you happen to have my stamp set, awesome! And I will have links for it in the description box below. You will also need some watercolors for this as well, and any watercolors will do. This is the ones I have in my stash, and if you don't have any, I will also have links in the description box below to different watercolors you can get. So to get started, I'm pulling out my acrylic block. You need these whenever using clear cling stamps, and I do have a video all about stamping that I will leave in the description box below. It's Stamping 101. For this ink, I'm just basically pouncing my stamp on top of it, making sure that I'm getting full coverage. You want to make sure it's completely covered and there's no spaces that's missing like the black ink. And then you just want to put some light and firm pressure all around the area so you get a good impression, but you really don't need to push very hard. Just make sure that you're just giving a light, firm pressure. And then I'm going to do this again because I want to create kind of like a random whimsical pattern. I'm not trying to go for perfection for this pattern. Now, if that's your thing, go for it, but I'm more of a like random whimsical type person myself, so I just wanted to create some random hearts going in different directions, and I just love the way that looks, but I might be a little biased because it is my stamp set. And even right now it just looks really nice, but if you really want to get fancy, you want to pull out your watercolors and you want to start creating and building a pattern. Now, how I'm doing this is I just pick out colors that I like best and I kind of just start building my pattern. Now, since I don't want it to be exactly perfect because that's not what I'm going for, I'm going to be adding yellow on this paper, but I'm not going to be doing it in a uniformed fashion. Meaning I'm not going to add the same amount every time, but I am going to be putting it on the sides of the heart because it creates like a patterned look, because a pattern is basically something in repeating itself. But without perfection, because I want it to look kind of like whimsical and not necessarily have it be perfect either, if that makes any sense. But you guys will see what I'm talking about at the end of it. Now I'm just pulling out my Signo black pen and I am just making little circles all around this to continue to build and create my pattern. Now these are just like random little wonky circles and I'm not adding the same amount to every piece. That's why I say it's not exactly like a perfect pattern. If you wanted to make it perfect, then maybe you'd want to add the exact amount of circles every single time, but that's not the look I'm personally going for. But like I said, this is the awesome thing about creating your own patterns and your own project life cards. It's whatever you like, whatever your style is, and this just happens to be my style. I'm just adding these in random fashion all over the paper, and I'm really loving the way that they're looking. I have something for kind of circles and random patterns that's like life. Now I'm just adding some pink in between the little areas where all the hearts are. I'm adding kind of like the more magenta-y type pink, but I'm being careful not to be careful, if that makes sense. Like, I'm going around and trying to keep the hearts white, but it's not really a big deal if they get covered because, like I said, this is not supposed to be perfect. And I really am liking the way that it's looking, and just keep in mind that watercolor does dry lighter when you do put it down, so this might look a little darker and then end up drying lighter. So if you want a darker look when you're adding colors, make sure that maybe after it dries you add a second layer or just put a little less water in your pan watercolors. And I'm also deciding to use a smaller brush for these certain areas where I kind of just want to get the color in there without have to worrying about it too much. But like I said, even sometimes getting outside of the lines or going over something actually makes it look kind of nicer and like intentional. So I really like to do that. I did decide to add some lighter pink, as you can see, to this, and there I am, I'm done with it, and I hope you guys liked it, and do your own and tag me if you do on social media. For the next part of this tutorial, I will be using some gelatos. These are the colors I happen to have on hand, so they're the ones I'm going to be using, but you can use whatever colors you want, and you will also need paintbrushes and a tissue to dab off and on while doing this process. And it's really fun, yet messy, so you guys will see what I'm talking about. It's definitely another process not made for perfection, and I'm using the Babe stamp set. Stamp that comes in my stamp set. I really think it's fun to do it with a variation of colors because you can create kind of like an ombre type effect going on, which is kind of what I'm doing here. But you guys can do whatever you fancy, so just go with the flow basically. I'm just adding on the color, and it's kind of the way a crayon is, what the consistency looks like, but it definitely goes on a lot smoother than what a crayon is. It's a little bit more buttery, if that makes any sense. I'm adding some light blue and then some dark blue on the bottom, and I'm just making sure that I have enough on there. You just want to make sure that it's completely covered on there like you would if you had inked it up with an ink pad. Next, you just want to use your paintbrush to dab on some water, and you can also use a sprayer if you have that. I'm just using my brush for this first part, but it ends up being a little bit messier than what I necessarily anticipated to because I used a little bit too much water. So you want to make sure that you don't use too much water and that you also don't brush on to the actual stamp too much so that you don't brush some of the color off or move it around too much. When I decided to spray with the ink pad, with the spray, onto the stamp, I ended up adding a little bit too much water, so I would say add just a little bit less, maybe 1 to 2 sprays, and kind of feel it out and see how it looks. And if you feel that it's too much water, then dab some of the water off or use less your next time. It's kind of a learning process whenever you do anything with mixed media stuff because sometimes, you can add a little bit too much of something, but it's really all right because that's part of this process and what makes it fun. And sometimes when you mess up, you discover something you really like. Now for this one, I'm just adding some purple and dark blue on the bottom of this, and I'm continuing with the same process. Like I said, for these kinds of techniques, you're not really looking for perfection because this is not going to stamp the way it would if you used an ink pad. And that's kind of the whole point. You want it to look kind of messy so you get that kind of watercolor look. And what I do is just clean around the edges after I spray it, so there's not any excess water falling off on the as I stamp on the actual paper. And as you can see, that one came out just a little bit more watery than it should, but I used my paper towel and just stopped up the water, and I just continued to do that. So that's definitely something you can do. And I actually go back in and add some more color onto an acrylic block, which you will see, just to fix the ones that came out a little bit messier than I would have anticipated, but I'm not really trying to get them perfect either because I could have just used an ink pad if I was trying to do that. You also want to make sure that you have a scrubber pad to clean off your stamp sets because, especially with gelatos, they're really hard to get off with just a baby towel or tissue. So I would definitely recommend using some Ultra Clean and your double stamp scrubber. And you can pick these up at local craft stores, and you can also look for them online. And this was when I was going in and just fixing certain pieces, and as you can see, I just kind of defined the words a little bit more. But anyway, I really hope you guys enjoyed these techniques, and if you did, be sure to thumbs up this video or subscribe if you're not already. And thank you guys so much for watching my videos and for being here and for all the sweet comments you guys leave me. Be sure and pick up my stamp set if you get a chance. The links will be in the description box below, as well links to my social media and all that other stuff. So thank you guys again. Bye!